KSBY News starts right now.
Good afternoon. We have some breaking news for you. An oil spill has covered a section of the coast of southern Santa Barbara County this afternoon. Local emergency crews are on scene. The Coast Guard, Fire Department, State Parks, Emergency Services, and all sorts of other groups are now dealing with a 4-mile wide oil slick that was spotted today. This derived from what we believe to be an oil pipeline that broke on the north side of the 101 near Refugio State Beach. Apparently that oil was spilling into the water, but that led to a fairly massive oil spill, or rather oil slick in the water that has been moving around, and much of that oil now has shown up again on the shoreline, spread across an area that's about 4 miles wide. Jeanette Trumpeter is live in the area, and she can give us a little more information about this. Jeanette, what do you see right now from where you're standing?
Well, a lot of oil just along the shoreline, Dan. Let me take a walk down here and you can see, I won't get too thick into it, but I'd say an inch or two of thick crude right here that has come down and kind of spread on these beaches. And I don't know how much you can see from the camera, but if you look out, you can see some of the containment vessels out there. Halfway between us and the containment vessel is where we see the end of the visible oil spill, but that doesn't mean there is not more oil right below that. We are seeing some mammals, even saw a whale just beyond where the oil is, and this is it's pretty thick. I mean, you can see it, and the thing that you get immediately when you come here, Dan, is the stench and the smell. However, there are still people up in the Gaviota campground who are enjoying the day and not letting this stop their plans. That will change, though, because we've just been informed by CAL FIRE that they will be evacuating that area. Now I want to bring Lily Tan. We have full team coverage for you here to explain where this oil is coming from. Obviously originally off on the platforms, but it's made a little journey before it broke onshore earlier today. Lily?
Thank you, Jeanette. Well, the oil, what it does is it comes from those offshore rigs that you see way out in the distance, and it comes through onto the beach through a pipeline, and then it actually goes up into some tankers. If we do have a graphic of the map of the Plains All-American Pipeline Services, they have not confirmed that it is their pipe yet, but they are aware of the situation and say that they are on scene helping out with the cleanup. Now, what happens once it goes up into their crude oil storage tanks is that the gas is separated from sand, sediments, gases as well, and then that crude oil can be pumped up to the Bay Area, we presume, to an oil refinery up there, and then that's what you get for your car as well. So that is the path that the oil travels to, and right now you can see what happened before with, like you said, the pipe burst over here and that oil is coming out this way now. So we do know that it is the oil that came from the tank that was probably on its way up to the Bay Area to be refined, since they did say that it was separated already.
Now these pipelines go through weekly inspections, flyover inspections, where there's any sign of any spill. We don't know if it is one of those inspections that led to the call today, or the fact that the oil had been leaking for a while and made it all the way to the coastline. But let me show you, I want to see if I can get our photographer Jason Orr to pan in on this. Somebody just abandoned their tennis shoes here on the beach today, clearly walked out and saw what was there, and that is just thick, gooey crude in the Pacific now. We have heard that from the crews out on the boats that maybe this containment will be fairly quick in the fact that it hasn't spread too far out in the Pacific, but they do have a job. They'll be out there throughout the night trying to get the containment and make sure that the damage is as minimal as possible. Of course, a lot of that depends on the currents and the winds and what's happening with the weather. So Dan, I want to get back to you in the studio and see if we can get some insight from Chief Meteorologist Dave Hovde.
Okay, and Jeanette, real quickly, I just wanted to ask you, we've been hearing reports that this is now covering an area about 4 miles wide. From where you're standing, can you see an end of this? Can you see where this has spread to?
No, I can't see as far as north and south how far down the beach the crude is, but when we are finished with you at 5:30, we'll take a walk both directions, and we have other crews here. I can tell you, about where you're seeing that blue boat is as far as I'm seeing any discoloration in the water. I think the 4 miles might be a bit big, and we just talked, there's a they're having a command post up the hill with all the agencies that are involved in this, which I would assume include the state parks and the oil companies and the Coast Guard, and they're trying to get some sense of what the extent of the spill is. And frankly, right now, Dan, they say they don't know. So they're looking into it. We'll look into it. We'll hopefully have more information for you throughout this newscast. All right, Jeanette, thank you so much for that. And we are going to check in right now with Dave Hovde, our chief meteorologist. But of course, Dave also follows currents, and there are a lot of dynamics involved in this. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, a couple of things. First, I want to get at the wind situation. The winds tug on the water. Of course, anything on top of the water, it's going to tug on that too. But you mentioned, and Jeanette mentioned, the smell of this as well, also going to be carried by the winds. So right now the winds off the central coast are out of the northwest, but in the channel the winds are actually onshore. So what we're getting here is a little bit of that smell getting pulled into where folks live. So that doesn't surprise me at all. The forecast as we go forward, more of this northwest flow. That's really important because it's a typical setup of the California current. The winds roar off the central coast, it gets blocked by the Santa Ynez Mountains, and then because of conservation of angular momentum, you actually get a turning of the larger California current. Well, when we look at what happens in the channel, we get a smaller circulation, and that actually goes both ways. So there's a little eddy circulation of the current in the channel. So even if you have a spill or a leak right at the coast, this current is going to carry it and spread it around the channel. And it's not just this, it's also the fact that oil is lighter than water and it has no adhesion to it. It's going to spread no matter what the current is either. This is a look at today's current situation. There is a high resolution radar view of what goes on out here. So we do have that circulation in the channel. How fast does it move? About a half mile per hour, but again, when you put a lot of that liquid into the water, half mile per hour, and that circulation tends to spread things out. Dan?
Well, Dave, I guess the good news here is that we have heard now that there are many vehicles in the water, several ships that are now setting out booms, and they are also trying to contain that slick. But let me ask you a quick question. If you have that area spread out already to 4 miles and it's continuing to spread at a half mile per hour, we may not be done with the movement of this slick by a long shot. Is that right?
Yeah, but the thing is, Dan, if you're not adding new liquid to the top, okay, once you get around the sides of it and contain it, it's going to get thinner as it spreads out over time. And the good news is, if this were off the central coast, because of all the flow, it would spread so much more quickly. But out here in the channel, a little bit wind blocked today, the situation is a little more benign. So is it ideal circumstances? No. But is it the worst possible circumstances for some containment? No. And there you get an aerial view. It's relatively calm in the channel, again, because the winds are blocked by the Santa Ynez Mountains.
Yeah, but we can certainly see a lot of that oil already on the shoreline there. We're going to bring in Rayanne Christensen. I believe the EPA has been out there with some assessments. Rayanne, are you there?
Yes, Dan, I am. We were just up at the headquarters, and the EPA, Fish and Wildlife, they are all on site right now monitoring the situation. They are currently evacuating the campground right now. Now, the big question is for residents that live in the area. There's not a lot of neighborhoods around this area, but they do say that you might be able to smell the smell. As I was driving in, I was a few miles out and I could smell the smell very strongly. Right now, there isn't an immediate threat to people right now, except for those that are closest to the campground. That's why they are evacuating the campground currently. They are asking residents and everyone to stay out of the area. There are a lot of people around here trying to see what's going on, seeing what's happening. Now, as far as the animals are concerned, Fish and Wildlife is also on scene as well. We just saw, as Jeanette said, we did see the whale right on the edge of the oil, and that is a big concern, and people that do see animals that are affected by this spill, they are asking you not to touch them, leave them alone. Call Fish and Wildlife, because these people are trained very technically. They're highly trained to deal with these kind of specific situations, and the creatures that are most affected by these are the oil floats. So the ones that are most affected are going to be the sea otters and most especially seabirds that are found on the surface. So again, if you do see them, do not touch them. Just call Fish and Wildlife. They are here on scene. And again, for residents, not an immediate concern for those that are in the area, except for those that are on the campground, which is why they are evacuating it at this time. Dan?
All right, Rayanne, thank you for that. We're going to bring in right now Wilma Subra, who is an expert on oil cleanup and works with groups, particular communities that have had to deal with this sort of cleanup. Wilma, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Tell me, first of all, you're a bit of an expert in this. Tell me a little bit about your area of expertise.
Well, I provide technical assistance to community groups and have been dealing with oil field waste and spills and leaks that have occurred from drilling and production activities since the 1970s.
Okay.
And did extensive work with the communities on behalf of the communities during the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster.
So you have obviously a lot of experience with this sort of thing. Wilma, let me ask you this. When you hear that there has been an oil spill and that the shoreline is involved and that there is an oil slick, what are the first things that go through your mind?
The first things that go are who will be impacted immediately. In addition to the organisms in the water, it's also the people on shore. When people had said earlier, an hour or so ago, that you could smell it, that meant it was being dispersed as an aerosol in the air, and I was told the winds were moving towards the shore. So the people on the shore, even though the oil does not get physically to them, inhales and ingests it and gets severe headaches and nausea and vomiting. And then when it hits the shoreline, it takes an extensive amount of effort to do the cleanup, and it takes many, many decades to clean up the shore.
Okay, so we know that if they have watercraft in the water right now trying to contain the spill itself, but the oil that is already up on the shoreline, what exactly is the process? How do you get that off of the sand and off the rocks, and what do you do with the wildlife that is impacted?
Well, you actually do some type of steam cleaning on the rocks and the sand, which take a very, very long time and generate a huge quantity of waste. If you have oil wildlife or oil birds, you bring in specialists that are damaging their systems. But then everything in the ecosystem, not just on the surface, but subsurface in the water column and in the sediment, will be impacted. So it's not just the birds and the large organisms you see, but it's the smaller organisms in the water column and in the sediment that will be impacted, and then have that impact with the potential to bioaccumulate up the food chain into the larger organisms. And you have to be very cautious that people don't start consuming any of the organisms that are being impacted by the crude.
When you see what's going on and you hear that it's miles wide, we can see it from helicopter views and it's covering the beach, what kind of response do you anticipate that we will see? How broad will it be?
You're going to see a very broad response in order to be able to address the problem and try and capture some of it before it comes on shore. But in addition to that, be able to address the situation as it's ongoing.
All right. Wilma, we appreciate it if you could stand by, because I know we will have more questions for you. We do appreciate your time right now. I believe we're going to go to Charlie Misra right now, who has also been following. Oh, excuse me. Actually, let's go to Jeanette first and check in. Jeanette, what do you have for us?
Well, the one thing that that's coming to mind as I listen to that interview, Dan, is the kind of response that will be necessary. And, you know, we're down here on the beach, and I'm going to go ahead and wait. I put on my rain boots to see how thick the stuff. There is no sort of cleanup happening here yet. They're kind of trying to contain it from going, whoa, this is slippery, sticky. So not that deep, but I don't know how close you can get in on this, Jason, but sticky, thick crude, but not even an inch deep at this point. But this is sort of unusual in spills that we've seen before, at least here on the Pacific coast that I've been part of. It's always coming from the ocean, so this is kind of interesting that it's washing out to shore, so the tide's definitely playing a part here. If you look out into the waves, you can actually see the oil in the waves. And then, Jason, I don't know if you can pan out to that blue boat out there, but that's where we're seeing one of our either gray whales or humpbacks kind of frolicking around them just on the edge of the oil line here today. Charlie Misra, you were one of the first of our crew to get down here today, and And I suppose you had the same reaction we did. The first thing you noticed was the smell.
That's exactly right, Jeanette. We were here a couple of hours ago, just about 2 miles down the road, and really the first thing we noticed was that pungent smell, the strong smell, and we didn't even have the windows down, and we could still, with the wind and everything, we could smell it from the first thing right when we got here. And I'm sure you've been able to tell as we've been down here, it's been close to unbearable at times, and it can give you a bit of a headache if you're smelling it too much or for too long.
It's just like kind of being at the gas station when you get that big whiff as you're filling up your tank. And you were saying that you smelled it, miles away.
That's right. We were 2 miles down the road. Right now we're just south of the 101, and we were just 2 miles down the road when you see the first Refugio State Beach sign, and we could smell it. It was very strong even then, and it's only gotten stronger, as you can imagine, right here, right next to it all.
And like I said, we're standing here, no sort of cleanup efforts happening here now. I think what most of the majority of the focus is right now is A, figuring how big this spill is, and B, stopping any more from going out into the Pacific. But this beach is empty. However, we're talking about the smell and the damage that we're seeing. There are people still in the campground making their barbecues, and life goes on until they get evacuated, because we do understand that will be happening very shortly, Dan. So all the emergency crews still in the response mode out here.
Well, we will check back in with you here shortly. I want to bring in Chief Meteorologist Dave Hovde right now. Dave, you were talking about the currents before and about the winds. It's a very complicated set of dynamics there.
They're new ones, too. I mean, we're going into a holiday weekend, and we've also got the sun that's going to be setting shortly. Right. So it's going to be more difficult now as we go into the evening hours. You can try to get some idea of how large this is. Copters are up now. They're trying to get a feel for that. Right. But then there's going to be a period where they won't be able to do a lot just because they won't be able to see the extent of the issue. Then there'll be probably a reassessment or re-engagement as we get into tomorrow. So again, this is a popular area as well. Of course. It's a tourist area going into a holiday weekend. So a lot of folks may be trying to get in there early. This is definitely interesting.
And it's a fragile environmental area too.
Absolutely true.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we will have more on the oil spill off the Santa Barbara County coast when we come back. Stay with us.
Jack, you talking to KMBC1?
Welcome back. We are live in Gaviota covering the oil spill that happened sometime just before noon today. Crews still responding and trying to get some containment here at Gaviota Beach, where, as you can see, it is covered with thick black crude. And if we look out into the waves a bit, we're seeing that there is plenty in the water. And what crews are doing right now is trying to figure out how bad this spill is. First order of business. B, contain it as best they can. What we are not seeing right now is any containment booms out there, so they're still in the process of all that. Big question, what will the tides, what will the weather do? So we want to get right back to Chief Meteorologist Dave Hovde for the latest on the Mother Nature's help with cleaning this thing up, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Jeanette. It's interesting, we're going into a big holiday weekend as well. This is Campus Point, live from our webcam network, and this is a situation where we're still in assessment mode. Right now in Santa Barbara, 68 degrees. Elsewhere, temperatures generally in the 60s. It's in the 70s in Paso Robles. We talked about this earlier in the newscast. The winds, again, tugging on the top of the water that creates the current. And right now, that wind is strongly northwest coming off the point. Well, you get a lot of blocking here with the channel and the Santa Ynez Mountains. So if the air's not moving here and the air's moving quickly out here, it's like if you had a wheel in here. It spins up and then we get a lot of channel currents. It's fairly common to see currents inside the channel. So even though this is a land-based spill, this current will help pull it out, and then oil's on top of that water and it starts to spread out. The thing is, over the next few days, not a lot of change in terms of the current. So it's fairly predictable right now. In the channel, it's more benign. Had this been some kind of spill off the central coast, there's a lot more airflow going on there and therefore stronger current. This is a look at the radar situation. the larger, broader scale view of what's going on with the weather. We have an area of low pressure here, this big broad trough, cool. Nothing in the way of rainfall in the short-term forecast, but drizzle. And we could actually have times where the visibility is limited over the next few days. Maybe that's an issue with cleanup. We'll have to assess that as we move forward. Out on the plains, big-time thunderstorms today, some tornadic activity off to the west of Dallas. This corridor along I-35, Oklahoma City to Dallas, has been extremely active over the last month, and flooding as well. For us, we're in the teeth of a drought. We need some rainfall. All we're going to get out of Mother Nature here is more cloud cover, spotty drizzle in the forecast. Temperatures on the cooler side as we go through the next 72 hours or so. There could be some showers and thunderstorms up in the Ventura, Los Angeles County, Kern County mountains as we get into Wednesday and again on Thursday. But here on the Central Coast, it's just going to be a lot of marine influence air, spotty drizzle from time to time. As we get into Thursday, another area of low pressure passing over the area. We're just too far west to get in line with any of the real showers. Again, I won't be surprised to pick up some drizzle or very light showers from time to time, but it's going to be very cloudy as we close this week and get into the weekend. So the forecast for Wednesday looks like this: 66 Santa Maria, 67 San Luis and Santa Barbara. Overnight lows tonight will be in the 50s, low 70s Santa Ynez Valley. Upper 60s in the California Valley tomorrow, low to mid 60s at the beaches. Again, a lot of cloud cover early and late, partial afternoon clearing, but again, that strong wind will be back in the afternoon. Maybe not as strong tomorrow, but it will be there. Thursday and Friday, the winds pick up again as we go into the weekend. Maybe just a little bit of a bump heading into the Memorial Day, but again, no big changes in this forecast, Dan. And that's one thing if you're trying to design some kind of a cleanup, some predictability, some lack of a curveball in the forecast is probably a good thing. Maybe they don't want the winds like they are right now, which of course helps support those stronger currents, but pretty bankable weather here. Yeah, well, we would like it to stay put so that they can begin to scoop that and skim that out of the water. Thanks, Dave. All right, well, of course, Santa Barbara is no stranger to oil spills. In fact, a big oil spill back in 1969 actually led to the modern day environmental movement. It was in January 28th, when a Union Oil Company platform about 5 miles off the coast of Summerland had a blowout. About 3 million gallons of oil were spilled. It took 11 days for workers to clean up the mess, but the residual took many, many years longer than that to begin to dissipate. Tar washed up along 35 miles of coastline. The oil killed dolphins, seals, and more than 3,500 birds. All sorts of marine mammals, of course, perished in that we don't even know about, frankly. Well, we have another update from Santa Barbara coming up right after the break. Stay with us. You're looking at live aerials of an oil spill, or at least you can see some of the responders there that presumably are working on cleanup of this oil spill. We understand it now covers about 4 miles of shoreline. This began with an on-land pipe that burst that we believe may be owned by Plains All-American Pipeline. We have not been able to confirm that, but you can see Refugio State Beach there, and that spill has spread outward. Dave Hovde, of course, has been following this too, keeping an eye on the currents and the winds. Dave, any thoughts here before we wrap up? I think we need to figure out the scale of this and the response, how long these beaches will be shut down going into a big weekend. We'll have more at 6 on this story.
Absolutely. Nightly News is next, and we'll be back at 6 o'clock with more.
About the booms that are being brought in right now.